Hi, 5th grade. Today we're going to be doing Module 1, Lesson 14. And for this lesson, we are still going to be dividing, but you are going to be seeing more strategies to help us with our division. So the last lesson was all about changing our units, thinking of division as multiplication, and then we would also put our division problems into standard form. Today we are going to talk about how we can solve our division problems with a place value chart like this. And then we're also going to start talking about how we can start using what we call the standard algorithm to solve our problems as well. So you should all have notes at your desk right now, and the lesson 14 notes look just like mine. So whatever I am filling in on my chart, you should also be filling in on your chart as well. All right, your notes are going to look something like this. I'm going to hold them back here so you can't copy off my notes just yet. But we are going to get started. Make sure you have your notes with you. And then we are going to get started on this first problem, 6 and 72/100 divided by 3. Now our place value charts are a little bit different because what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to be using place value discs and divide them between these groups down here, and those groups down there are going to show me my answer. So I'm going to show you how to start this off. First, I have this number 6 and 72/100 divided by 3. I'm going to show what 6 and 72/100 looks like with place value discs and my place value charts. So for example, I have 6 in my ones place, so I will draw 6 place value discs right here to show that I have 6 ones. Then I have 7 tenths, so I draw out 7 tenths. 5, 6, 7, so I use 7 dots right there. And finally, I have 2 hundredths. So in your own place value chart, you should have these dots right now. Then I need to divide this number by 3. So that is why I have 1, 2, 3 groups down here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do like a little dance or song right now, and we're going to be cross off a box, or cross off a dot, put it in a box, and then after I cross off one dot, I'm going to cross off another dot, and put it in a box, and then I cross off another dot, cross off a dot, put it in a box, and what I just did is I just equally distributed these 3 ones between these 3 groups. Since each of these groups has one place value disc, I then continue on, but I go back up to my first group and cross off a dot, put it in a box, and then I keep going through this process. So I cross off my next dot, I put that in a box, and then I cross off another dot, and I put it in a box. And now all of my dots have been crossed off. I don't have any extras. All my groups are equal, and in each group, I have 2 dots. So what I'm going to do is at the bottom, I'm going to write the number 2, because that is telling me that my 6 ones divided by 3 is 2. Now I'm also going to show you what this looks like in our standard algorithm. So we're going to be bouncing back and forth between this place value chart and this standard algorithm. So make sure you're keeping up in your notes. So hopefully remember how to divide using the standard algorithm, but this might be a bit of a refresher. So I first want to take a look at this number on the outside. This number on the outside is telling me what I am dividing by. So I need to try and fit this number inside of each of these eventually. So I start off with my 3, and I think about how many times can 3 go into 6? Well, 3 times 2 is 6. So I will put a 2 up here, and remember that we need to multiply. That's one of our steps in division for a standard algorithm. So then I do 3 times 2, and then I put that answer right here. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then my next step is I need to subtract. So I do 6 minus 6, which gives me 0, and now I need to bring down my next place value, which is a 7. So now you can see that I am left with 7 tenths, because this is the 7 is in my tenths place. And now I'm going to show my work for 7 tenths on my place value chart. So again, I cross off a dot, put it in a box, cross off a dot, put it in a box, cross off a dot, put it in a box. I still have more dots left to go, so I'm going to keep going. Cross off a dot, put it in a box. You see how I restarted back at the top. Cross off another dot, put it in a box, cross off another dot, put it in a box. Now I have one dot left that I have not crossed off. I'm going to circle this dot to remind myself that I need to do something with this later. But right now, and I don't want to put this dot in any of these boxes because that would make my groups uneven. I don't want uneven groups. So just like the last problem, I have 2 place value discs in each of my groups. So the answer for this place value is 2. So I'll put a number 2 right here as well. And then I'm going to show my work for what I just did over here. So now I'm thinking about how many times can 3 go into 7? Well, 3 can go into 7 2 times. So I'll put a 2 right here. I'm going to bring this decimal straight up. We don't want to forget about those decimals. Decimals should always be lined up. So now I have 2.2 up here. Remember, I still need to multiply, so I do 3 times 2. 3 times 2 gives me 6. And then I can subtract. So then I do 7 minus 6, which gives me a remainder of 1. I'm going to move this over. So I have 7 minus 6, which gives me 1. And that 1 right there is important because what do we have left over here? We have 1/10 left over. So this 1/10, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down this 2, because remember we always have to bring down the next place value. And my number now becomes 12. Now you might be a little bit confused because you're like, well, I don't have 12 anywhere. But remember that this 1/10 is going to move over into the hundredths place. And 1/10 is going to become 10 hundredths, just like so. And now I have 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hundredths, just like I do over in my standard algorithm. Now I'm going to continue solving by crossing off a dot, put it in a box, cross off a dot, put it in a box, cross off a dot, put it in a box, cross off, keep going, keep going, keep going until I have no dots left or I can't make any more even groups. And finally, I now have something a little bit different. Instead of just having 2 in each group, I now have 4 in each group. So my answer is going to be the number 4. So I have 2 1s, 2 10ths, 4 hundredths, which gives me a final answer of 2 and 24 hundredths, but I want to make sure that I check my work as well. And you should check that you have all of this in your place value chart, that you have this written down so far for your standard algorithm, and that you didn't forget to write your answer up here. So down here I was able to write my answer by showing how many dots were in each group, and now I'm going to show my work in my standard algorithm. So I need to figure out how many times can 3 go into 12. Well, 3 can go into 12 4 times. So I put a 4 up here. And then I do 3 times 4 is 12. I subtract 12 minus 12, and that gives me 0. Since I have a remainder of 0, that means I can stop. And again, I got a final answer of 2 and 24 hundredths. Now, unfortunately, it is not enough to just do all this work. We also want to check our answers to make sure that we are correct. And how we can check our answers is we can take our answer, this 2.24, and we can multiply it by the number we were dividing by. So basically, whenever you want to check your work, you take your answer that's on top, and you take the number that's on the outside. So basically you take all the numbers that are on the outsides and you multiply them together and see if it matches the number that is on the inside. So again, take the numbers on the outside, multiply them, make sure it matches the number on the inside. So 4 times 3 is 12, 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1, which is 7, and 2 times 3 is 6. Bring down my decimal, and I get a final answer of 6 and 72 hundredths, which does match the number on the inside, so I know that my answer 2 and 24/100 is correct. All right. Take your time to get down all these notes. Your notes should be looking like this right now. So if you need to, pause the video, make sure your notes are all there. And then we're going to move on to the next problem. So I'm going to kind of swing you over here. And we're going to get ready for this one. All right, let me make sure I have everything in the right spots. All right, cool. So for our next problem, we now have 5 and 16/100 divided by 4. So I'm dividing by a bigger number now. And again, my first step is going to be to draw my place value discs. So I have 5 ones. So I draw 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I have 1/10. So I draw 1/10. And I have 6/100. So I draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I have all my dots right here, and I am dividing it by 4, so I have 4 groups. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 groups. And finally, I can start dividing now. So remember, we're going to do our strategy of cross off a dot, put it in a box, until either I have no more dots left, or until I can't make any more even groups and I have dots left over. So if I were to add this dot into one of my boxes, I would no longer have equal groups, and I don't want that. So this one extra dot, I'm going to circle that, and I'm going to move it over, and remember, what is this 1, 1 going to become? 1, 1 becomes 10 tenths. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So my 1, 1 that was left over became 10 tenths. Now let's see how that works over here in my standard algorithm. So first I need to think about how many times can 4 go into 5. Well, 4 can go into 5 one time. So I put a 1 up here. And then remember, I need to multiply. I'll put this little X here to remind myself of that. So I do 4 times 1, which is 4. So I put that right underneath here. And then I need to subtract. So 5 minus 4 is 1, just like how I had that leftover 1 over here. And now I need to remember to bring down my next place value because I still have a remainder. And now I have 11 tenths, just like I do over here. Because I had the 1/10 that was already there, and then I had the 1, 1 that moved over and became 10 tenths. And now I can continue working. Let's not forget our decimal here. All right, so for our next one, again, we do the cross off dot, put it in the box. And we do that until we can't get any more equal groups. I'll give you a hint for this one. We are going to have some leftover. All right, so I want you to stop here where you have the 2 dots in here, because I'm going to kind of look ahead and I'm going to see that I only have 3 dots left, but I have 4 groups. So if I only have 3 dots left, that would mean that I can only put dots in 3 boxes, not all 4. So since I can't evenly move them, I'm going to circle all of these, and all of these dots are going to move over to my 100th place. Now it's going to be a lot of work that we're going to have to do right here, because remember, each of these dots, each of these 1 dots, if it moves over to a smaller place value, it becomes 10 dots. So if I have 1/10, it's going to become 10 hundredths. But right now I have 3 tenths. So that's going to become 30 hundredths. So take your time and show me what 30 hundredths would look like. And then also at the bottom, we're going to write the answer for this place value, which is 2. So let's draw out our 30 hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Whew, that was a lot. All right. So I'm going to check my work over here with my standard algorithm to see what else is going on this side. So I'm going to see how many times can 4 go into 11. 4 can go into 11 2 times. So I put a 2 up here. And now I am going to do 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So I'll write 8 over here, and then I will subtract. So then I do 11 minus 8, which is 3. Just like how I had these 3 extra dots. And then I need to bring down my 6, because I still have more place values to work with. And now I am left with 36, just like I am over here, because I have 30 dots right here from when I brought over these 3 tenths. They became 30 hundredths. And I also had the 6 hundredths that I started with. So now I get to do the really long job of crossing up all these dots and putting them in the correct boxes. So I'll give you a hint. It's going to be 9 dots in each group. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so all my dots are now distributed throughout my groups, and in each group I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So my hundredths answer will be 9. Now, this is a great example of how the place value chart can help us, but it can also be a lot of extra work as well, kind of like those place value charts we used when we were multiplying. So this is why knowing how to do our standard algorithm can really help us out, because it lets our work become a lot easier than having to do all these dots. So let's start over here. So now I need to figure out 4 goes into 36 how many times? Well, 4 times what is close to 36 or is 36? Well, 4 times 9 is 36. So I'll put a 9 up here. Then I'll think about 4 times 9 is 36. And then I will subtract. 36 minus 36 is 0. And that is my final answer for this problem. So I will put 1 and 29 hundredths up in my answer bar. But remember, I also need to check my work. So I'll do 1 and 29 hundredths times 4. Remember, I take everything that's on the outside and multiply it by each other. 9 times 4 is 36. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 3, which is 11. 1 times 4 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. And that gives me a final answer, again, of 5 and 16 hundredths, which does match the inner box. So we got our answer correct because everything matches. And now we can move on to the next problem. Just for your reference, your notes should be looking something like this right now. So please make sure you have all this down in your notes. And then flip over your notes. And we just have 2 problems that we're going to just use the standard algorithm for to solve. So let me erase this. And let's see what we can do with these problems. So for this problem, we are going to be solving 6 and 72 hundredths divided by 4. Now, I am not going to be using any sorts of place value charts. I'm just going to be using the standard algorithm. I'm going to put this little multiplication symbol back up here just to remind myself of that I'm going to be multiplying eventually. So my first step, I need to figure out how many times can 4 go into 6. Well, 4 times 1 can fit into 6, because if I did 4 times 2, that would be 8, and that's too big. It's bigger than 6, so it doesn't work. Then I'm going to take the answer 4 times 1, which is 4, and I write that directly underneath that, and then I subtract. I subtract 6 minus 4, which is 2, and then since I still have another place value, I need to bring that down, and then continue the whole process over again. I'm going to bring this decimal straight up so I don't forget about it in my final answer. And let's continue on. Next, I have to think about 4 times what is close to 27. Well, if I did 4 times 7, that's 28. So that's too much. But if I did 4 times 6, 4 times 6 would be perfect, because 4 times 6 is 24, and that is smaller than 27, but it's not too small. So let's continue from here. Okay, good. So now we have 4 times 6, 24, and then we're going to do 27 minus 24. 7 minus 4 is 3. 2 minus 2 is 0, but I don't need to write the 0 there. And then, since I have another place value, I bring it down, and now I have 32. So now I need to think about 4 times what is 32, or close to 32. 4 times 8 is 32, so that would be perfect. So I'll write an 8 right up above that place value. It's very important that everything is lined up by its place values. And then I'll do 4 times 8 is 32. And then I can subtract. So 32 minus 32 is 0. I have no more place values to bring down, and I have a remainder of 0. So I am done, and our final answer is 1 68 hundredths. All right, so your notes should be looking like this right now. And then we're going to move on to your final problem with me. So this problem is a little bit trickier because it has some zeros involved, and we're going to have to skip some place values. So for this one, we have 20 and 8 hundredths divided by 8. And for this problem, I'm going to have to skip around just a bit. So 8, and I'll put my multiplication symbol here so I don't forget about it. 8 times anything will be too big to fit into 2. So I'm going to skip that place value, and instead I'm going to think about this as 20 instead. So I don't just skip all the way to 0. I take this all together now, and I think about, well, 8 times what is close to 20? Well, I could do 8 times 2, because 8 times 2 is 16. But notice where I wrote my number, my answer. I wrote it above the place value that I'm trying to get into. I'm not trying to fit 8 2 times into 2, because that wouldn't make any sense. I am trying to fit 8 2 times into 20, so I make sure that I put my answer directly above that number. So then I figure out 8 times 2 is 16, and now I can subtract. So 0 minus 6, I can't do that, so I cross off the 0. This becomes a 10. And I borrow from the 2, and that becomes a 1. 10 minus 6 is 4, and 1 minus 1 is 0. I don't need to put the 0 there. Then I'll bring down the 0. I'll put my decimal point up here so I don't forget about it. And then I'm going to continue on. So now I have 8 times what equals or is close to 40. So 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 5 is 40, so I'll just put the 5 up here, and then I'll complete the rest of my problem. 8 times 5 is 40, so I'll write the answer there. I will then subtract 40 minus 40 is 0, and then I'll bring down that 8 because I still have another place value that I need to complete. So then I have to think about, well, 8 times what is 8? Well, 8 times 1 is 8, so then I'll complete the rest of my problem. 8 times 1 is 8. Then I can subtract. 8 minus 8 is 0. I have no more place values to fix. I have to bring down. I have no remainder, so my answer is complete. But let's say I want to check my work. Remember, I take everything on the outside, so I'll take 2 and 51 hundredths times 8. And I'm going to see if this answer matches the number in the box. So 20 and 8 hundredths. 1 times 8 is 8. 5 times 8 is 40. So I carry the 4 and leave the 0. Bring this decimal down. 8 times 2 is 16. And 16 plus 4 is 20. So that leaves me with my final answer of 20 and 8 hundredths. And that does match the inside of the box. So I am correct. Your final work should look like this in your notes. And then 5th grade, you are going to move on to the you try part of your notes. So it kind of looks like this back here. And then I'll be coming around to check your work when you are done with that. Make sure you pay attention to this problem because you are going to have to skip a place value in this problem. So you will have a 0 somewhere in your answer. So somewhere up in this answer area, you will have a 0. Make sure you check your work when you're done. because if you check your work, that will give you a good idea if you got the problem right or wrong. Good job today. I know this is a long video and a tough lesson, but you guys are doing awesome. So keep up the good work and good luck.